All right, it's Tuesday night, not Wednesday night, Tuesday night, and we are live for the Panther-Lair Show. Had to change things up this week due to the Pitt basketball game. That's tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Pitt's at Vanderbilt. We'll talk about that for sure tonight because that's a big game for Pitt. A lot on the line in terms of continuing season momentum. It's not a conference game like the NC State game was, but in terms of continuing the momentum they have right now, there's a lot riding on it, and I think they just might be up to the task. So we're going to have to talk about that for sure. I hope everybody got the notes and the memos and the messages and the tweets and the comments and all the message board posts and all those things that would tell you that we are on tonight as opposed to Wednesday night. Hopefully everybody can make it in. We'll give everybody some time to join the show, but I appreciate everybody who is lining up at the door. I feel like you're like outside the club, waiting for the show to go on, the weekly live Panther-Lair Show. But good to be here on a Tuesday. I mean, I like Wednesdays because they're the midweek, but I think there's a few games Pitt has this season, a few Pitt basketball games on Wednesday nights, so we're gonna have to adjust for that, and we'll probably move them to Tuesday nights most times because usually Pitt basketball has some Wednesday night games. The Howell Elementary School 4th grade basketball team has practice on Thursday nights, so we're not going to be able to do the live show on Thursday. So it's going to be Tuesdays. Tuesdays are seems like the main night when we have to switch things up. When there's a basketball game on Wednesday nights, we'll switch it to Tuesday night for the live stream. Inevitably, we'll have a lot to talk about, of course. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, in case you don't know that. Sometimes, every now and then, there'll be someone who says, "Man, who are you? Like, why doesn't this guy say what his name is?" And I guess I always just sort of assume, since we've done like 700 podcasts or something, not 700 live streams, but I've been doing the podcast for about close to 700 episodes in various incarnations over the past probably 6 or 7 years or so. But I always assume that everybody just sort of knows, like, you're tuning into this show, the website, even, and know the YouTube channel and know who I am, I guess. I was just kind of assume that. But then again, I assume that, but then I sit here and I talk about Panther-Lair.com. I talk about how it's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, that we cover football, basketball, and recruiting, that we have message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans, that when something's going on in Pitt sports, the first thing you need to do, you get the information, then you go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. One, to see if anyone else has shared the information yet, and two, to go talk about it once people have. And so it's a pretty great online gathering place for Pitt fans. I think it's the best internet community of Pitt fans that you're going to find, and we certainly have a lot of fun there all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com. And of course, the YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. While you're here, like this video, this live stream, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's free. All you have to do is click that little subscribe button down there, and then you'll always be tuned in for any of our exclusive Pitt video content. When we do these live streams on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night, you don't have to worry about making sure you catch the tweet or see what I say, what day we're going live. You click subscribe, you turn on the notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone letting you know what's going on. And so that's a good way to make sure you never miss out on anything that we do here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And of course, we have the morning Pitt videos that we release Monday through Friday. Played a little guitar this week on the Monday episode of the Morning Pitt. So yeah, we get a little we mix it up sometimes. We could be a little Renaissance man, you know what I mean? Try to do some different things on the Morning Pitt. Fortunately for you, I did not sing. So I talk about all those things, but I never actually say who I am. So Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. We get together here once a week to talk about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, and it has been a busy week so far. I'm looking at the chat screen right now. We got a lot of people already rolling in, and this is awesome. We got a lot of comments and questions rolling in, and a lot of it's about the quarterback. So let's set the scene on the quarterback situation, just so we're all on the same page with what's going on. There's a chance you lived under a rock on Monday and missed all of the updates and things that happened. But yesterday was a crazy day. I mean, it was one of those days where news was just popping left and right. And it was all quarterback related. I mean, there were other things that we wrote about on Panther-Lair.com, other news updates that we posted about transfers and recruits and this kind of thing and that kind of thing. But the big news was all quarterback related. Pitt lost a quarterback to the transfer portal. Pitt gained a quarterback from the transfer portal. And Pitt added a high school commitment. Let's start with the attrition. Keaton Slovis is gone. And these rumors started late last week and over the weekend that Keaton Slovis was considering a transfer. I think that those considerations began even earlier in the season, probably a few weeks ago, maybe even a month or so more, maybe a month or even more ago. The Keaton Slovis started thinking about potentially leaving Pitt for the transfer portal right around 1 year after he arrived. And on Monday, he did. He decided to go into the transfer portal, submitted his paperwork. I imagine he'll officially hit the portal tomorrow. I think he submitted his paperwork on Monday. Schools typically have 48 hours to formally get the paperwork in. And, so I think that's why, I think that's probably the only thing that's, holding up there. But he's gone. And, there's different possibilities of where he might go. Missouri has been rumored a lot. I've heard some conflicting information on that. All of it from people that I trust. People I trust telling me that he's going to go to Missouri, and people I trust telling me Missouri's not really that interested in him. And ultimately, where he goes and what he does has little impact on me. It has little impact on Pitt. You could stretch and say, well, if he goes somewhere and lights it up, that's going to reflect poorly on Pitt's offensive coaching staff and offense and all that stuff. Maybe, maybe not. What's important to me, what's relevant to me, what's relevant to Pitt, and what's ultimately relevant to you is that he's not here anymore. And that was largely the approach I took when Jordan Addison transferred too. People pointed out Addison's stats that they weren't what they were last year, that he didn't improve on his stats from last season. After transferring to USC. And to be honest, I never really thought he was going to improve on his stats from last season. I mean, his stats last season were built in a Mark Whipple offense with a Heisman Trophy. I can't say that as a point of distinction since Caleb Williams is a Heisman Trophy finalist. But it was built in a Mark Whipple offense that threw the ball 1 million times and threw the ball to Jordan Addison about 997,000 of those 1 million times. He was never going to get that kind of target share. He was never going to get that kind of volume work at USC where they have more than one. I don't want to say more than one Jordan Addison because I think he still stands alone. I think he is one of one. But they have some other guys. They have other guys who are going to demand the ball, the other guys who are going to deserve the ball, and other guys who are going to be able to make plays with the ball in their hands. And so it was never going to be the Jordan Addison show at USC the way it was at Pitt. And so inevitably his production was going to go down. But he still had a great year. He still was awesome. He still was one of the best receivers in the country. He played great. And, he would not have put up, if you want to talk about stats falling off, his stats at Pitt this season, if he'd stayed at Pitt this year, his stats would not have matched what he did a year ago. But ultimately, I really didn't care. What's relevant to me, what's notable to me, and what directly affects the job I have to do, this scribbled legal pad, what affects that is whether or not the guy is on Pitt's roster. And Keaton Slovis, no matter where he goes, is not going to be at Pitt. And we can sit back and it might be a more fun summer activity to kill a week where we don't have a lot going on and just to sit back and talk about the Keaton Slovis year at Pitt. But my guess is by the time we get to the summer, we're not going to have even that much to say about it anymore. It was a year. He was a guy. And I can't say that, I think he ultimately was the quarterback of an 8-4 team that went 7-4 while he was starting, threw 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, was pretty unremarkable outside of occasional flashes. And I think he could have been better. I think he was capable of being better. I think he had an NFL arm. I think he can make all the throws. But I think ultimately the offense just wasn't a good fit for him. And that's on him. That's on Frank Cignetti for not tailoring the offense better to him. I mean, he's a guy who came from an air raid system at USC. And he was playing in a pro-style offense, which wasn't necessarily a good fit for him. And it's a shame because I think he did have all those physical tools. It just didn't fit here for a variety of reasons. And now he's gone. And like I say, it'll be a footnote, a trivia question, like a Tom Savage type of trivia question. or a Max Brown type of trivia question, or a, hey, do you remember that guy type of trivia question. No big wins. Solid finish to the season with 4 wins. That's good. But not even here to play in the bowl game. So, via con Dios, Keaton Slovis. And then we move on to who they brought in. I'm parched today. That's water, not not vodka or clear alcohol or something like that. It's a school night, man. We're not drinking on a school night. You can, but I'm not. So they brought in Phil Jurkovec, of course, and you know this already. Transfer from Boston College, originally from Pine Richland, went to Notre Dame, then transferred to Boston College. Had his best season of his college career in 2020, playing with Frank Cignetti. Completed. Had the numbers all. I feel like I've recited these numbers so many times. He did 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Not Heisman Trophy numbers, but solid numbers, good numbers. Dealt with injuries over the last 2 seasons. Only played in 14 games in the 2021 and 2022. Didn't put up great numbers in the 14 games that he played. But there's no question about Jurkovec that he's big. He's got a good arm. He can run around a little bit. He's got some mobility, some toughness. Could be a rushing threat in the red zone. You know, somebody who might be able to score some goal line touchdowns for you, or inside the 5 or inside the 10 even. Can run some RPOs probably. Could be a threat on some quarterback draws, and can be a guy who can keep a play alive, maybe break a couple tackles and heave it downfield. I think that's the kind of player you're getting in Phil Jurkovec. But my opinion about Jurkovec doesn't matter. My thoughts on, you know, how he'll fit or what he's got left or excuse me, what he can do this season, it's inconsequential. What matters is the opinion of Pat Narduzzi, and more importantly, the opinion of Frank Cignetti. And in Frank Cignetti, you've got a guy who worked with Jurkovec before. 2 seasons together. 2020 and 2021, they worked together at Boston College. Like I say, 2020 was a good year for Jurkovec. 2021, not so much, largely because he got hurt. But if there's anyone who would know whether or not Jurkovec fits into what Pitt wants to do on offense, it will be Frank Cignetti. And so if Cignetti looks at him and says, well, I've got a really crucial season coming up here in 2023. Most Pitt offensive coordinators under Pat Narduzzi don't make it more than 2 years. My offense, or the offense as a whole, was largely responsible for this team in 2022 falling well short of expectations and being a disappointment. And we really need to do much better next year, particularly if we bring back a bunch of the guys we have. And if the offense falls short again, it's going to be a bad scene for me. And so Frank Cignetti's looking at the situation and has to be thinking all of those things. And if he wants to say, Phil Jurkovec is our guy, he's the one I'm going to stake this whole thing on, then that's his call. And he's certainly got the background information to base it on. He knows what Jurkovec can do, and he knows how Jurkovec can fit. He knows what kind of plays to call for Jurkovec. He knows what kind of offense to run for Jurkovec. And if he's got even some of the playmakers back from last season and they add a few more key pieces in the portal, they should have an opportunity to produce. But we'll have to find out. Jurkovec will be here in January, coming home, after being in Western Pennsylvania. Growing up in Western Pennsylvania, he's finally going to play a year at Pitt, and he'll just have 1 year. It's his sixth year, his super senior season, and he'll play 1 year at Pitt, and we'll find out how he does and what he can do. And then the third piece, Ty Diefenbach, the high school recruit who committed to Pitt also on Monday. This is a guy in the aftermath of Kenny Minchey decommitting from Pitt to go to Notre Dame. Frank Cignetti and his offensive staff went on a hunt for quarterbacks, trying to find guys to fill that spot in the 2023 recruiting class. There's not a lot out there. A lot of guys are committed, and they knew if they were going to get someone, they were probably going to have to flip them off their commitment. Ty Diefenbach is a quarterback from California. He's 6'5", 200 pounds, big kid, very tall, and was committed to UNLV. Well, Pitt landed on him, found his tape. Frank Cignetti really liked his tape, went out and visited him on Saturday, visited him at his house for about a half hour, and then they went over to the field, and he threw for 15 minutes, and he had him do Cignetti had Diefenbach do some things he doesn't usually do in his high school offense. Cignetti liked what he saw and offered him on the spot. A day or two later, Diefenbach decommits. I guess it was actually yesterday. Diefenbach decommitted from UNLV and committed to Pitt. So you've got these pieces coming together. You've got Slovis leaving. You've got Jurkovec coming in as the veteran transfer to be the senior, to be the starter. And then you've got Diefenbach coming in as a high school recruit. There's another piece of the puzzle here, and that's the young transfer. We keep breaking this down on Panther-Lair.com. There were really sort of three goals here. You get a veteran transfer who wants to be who can come in and be the starter. You get the high school recruit who can come in and develop over the next 4 or 5 years. And then you get the young transfer, guy coming off his freshman year, or his redshirt freshman year, maybe his sophomore, maybe even redshirt sophomore year, and you bring him in to also develop and compete for the starting job in 2024. Everybody knows the scene. Everybody knows the deal that the starter is going to be Jurkovec in 2023. I think that's probably, I don't know if they're using that explicit of language, but it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. But then the open starting job in 2024, I think they want some older players, guys with a little bit of experience to be able to compete for that. And so you bring in a young transfer, somebody who's been in the environment of college football for a year or two. He can come in, have a year at Pitt, learn the offense, and compete heading into 2024. I think ideally they'd like to have Nate Yarnell back, but Yarnell's going to have to make a decision as he looks around at a completely rebuilt quarterback room. He's going to have to make a decision about whether or not he wants to return for another year in 2020, really in 2023. Because he's got a couple years of eligibility left, and he could look for something maybe a little closer to home as a kid out of Texas. So that's a moving piece to kind of keep an eye on. But I think the goal is to bring in as many guys as they can for January enrollment, so they're all here for the spring, so that Jurkovec and Diefenbach and the young transfer and ideally Yarnell can all take snaps together and work together and learn together as they attempt to sort of internalize the offense in spring camp. So that's the goal. And now you're kind of brought up to speed on where things stand. They've got Diefenbach, they've got Jurkovec, and now they're trying to find a young transfer, which I think, they had some options they were honing in on early in the week, and more guys keep going into the transfer portal, and I think it's leading the Pitt offensive staff to kind of look around a little bit more. I feel like if you're trying to get a starter, right, from the transfer portal, you probably have an idea of who your top guy is right off the bat because you've seen film. You want a veteran player. You want a guy who's been around, a guy who's started games, who's had success, like a Jurkovec or a Slovis, a guy who's played a lot. And so you kind of know who they are and you have an idea of who they are. So I think you can more easily identify your top target. I think Keaton Slovis was identified pretty early on as the top target last year. I think Phil Jurkovec was identified pretty early on as the top target this year because you knew who those guys were, you knew what they could do, and you kind of knew what they were going to bring. When you're looking for that young transfer, I think the situation's a little bit different because you don't have as much film. So a lot of these guys, you got to reach out to them and get their practice film. This is what guys are getting themselves recruited on. They don't have their high school. They're not going to use their high school huddle film, although if a guy just finished his freshman year, he might. But for the most part, they're gonna send you tape from practice and say, here's what I was doing in 7-on-7s in practice, or here's what I was doing during inside run drill in practice, or 1-on-1s, or whatever it is, or team drills. And so you have to track all that down. You can't just put on the games and see how these guys did because they didn't really play much. So whereas you might identify your number one target to be the starter, in the transfer portal, and you can kind of hone in on that one guy and really focus on him and go get that guy. I think when you're trying to get the young transfer, it's a little bit trickier. It might take a little more time just to evaluate all the options that are out there. And if you've watched any of the social media coverage of the transfer portal in the last 48 hours, there's a ton of guys out there, and it's been pretty crazy. And your mind starts spinning when you see how many guys are out there entering the transfer portal every day. It's been crazy. And Monday was wild, and Tuesday didn't slow down. It was just guys going in, boom, 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 boom. And it's going to happen again tomorrow because all those guys who probably felt like they couldn't put in their papers until Monday, they're all going to get in on Wednesday. And it's just going to keep rolling. Oh, man. And more guys from Pitt are probably going to go. I think that's probably a safe assumption that you're going to have more portal entries coming out of Pitt. I think they have 6 so far. I'm sure more guys are going to be heading in. All right. I think it's time to jump into the chat screen. You guys have been posting so many comments and questions. We appreciate it. Listen, if you want to make sure you get your comment read or your question answered, you can you can be a super chatter. So you can click the little $sign down there at the bottom of it's probably down on the right-hand side of the screen down there. Click that. You can support the podcast with a couple bucks. We appreciate that, and we will definitely read your comment or your question if you have one. Before we jump into that, though, I want to I got to mention Chris Gates. You guys have heard me talk about Chris a lot of times. He's probably on here tonight, or I know he always makes a point to tune in on Wednesdays. He might miss on a Tuesday since we switched the nights, but I know he checks out the Morning Pit videos. I know he checks out these live streams, and he runs his website, chrisgatesfitness.com. And I mean, I call it a website. It's an operation. It's a business, and it's a coaching business. And what does Chris coach? He coaches health and fitness, and you should know it. You know, he's an online fitness coach. I guess that's the title he prefers for himself. I like to think of him as a guru, but he refers to himself. He says he's an online fitness coach. And what Chris does is he works with people all over the world to create customized fitness and nutrition programs that work, which is pretty important, right? And he supports his clients every step of the way. Chris is a huge Pitt fan, and he loves supporting our podcast, and we appreciate that. Now, to start 2023, because believe it or not, we are coming up to the end of the calendar year. To start 2023, Chris is going to be opening up applications and accepting new clients from January 2nd to January 8th. After that, applications will be closed until late spring or early summer. So if you're interested in setting a health or fitness goal for the next year, you want to make sure you're able to not only make progress but sustain it, visit chrisgatesfitness.com. Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Gates, G-A-T-E-S, fitness.com. And this is the best part. If you mention Panther-Lair, when you apply for the online coaching, you'll get 75% off your first month of coaching. That's an incredible deal. If somebody's going to give you something 75% off, I mean, that's you know, you should take it. If somebody's going to give you 75% off something, you should go get it, because that's just an awesome deal. So go to chrisgatesfitness.com. Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Gates, G-A-T-E-S, fitness.com. Mention Panther-Lair when you apply. Get a jump start on the year. You know what I mean? Like, hey, everybody has New Year's resolutions and that kind of thing. Hit the ground running and get dialed in with your health goals, your fitness goals, your nutrition goals, your lifestyle goals. Chris will help you with all of those. I don't know about the lifestyle like in your closet. I don't think Chris is going to organize your closet for you, but it'll help you get everything else dialed in so you'll feel good and get a great start to the year. chrisgatesfitness.com, mention Panther-Lair, get 75% off your first month of coaching when you apply. All right, let's jump into the comments and questions, because you guys have been loading these up for the last half hour, maybe even longer. And so I want to get to as many as we can. BMX says, what do you got? You got a picture or something there? BMX dog, BMX tiger, BMX goat. Says, on ESPN today, Keaton Johnson said all the quarterbacks in the portal are there because they can't play. And he specifically pointed out Keaton Slovis. Phil Jurkovec was also on the list, but I still say it's an upgrade. Well, first of all, if Keaton Johnson said all the quarterbacks are in the portal because they can't play, I mean, I got to be honest with you, and I don't know Keyshawn's Keaton might know more about college football than I'm giving him credit for, but I don't know how closely he's paid attention to it. Right? I mean, it's actually I don't watch ESPN's. I haven't had a chance to watch many of ESPN's college football shows. I mean, I know the people like they cover the ACC, like David Hale and Andrea Adelson. I mean, is Keaton on College Football Game Day? Is he one of their college football analysts? Does he do play-by-play? Does he cover games? And I'm not asking this rhetorically. I genuinely don't know. I mean, I know he hasn't covered games on the ACC network that I've watched, so I can't call him out there. But look, just because a quarterback or any player is in the transfer portal, it doesn't mean that they're there because they can't play. Jalen Hurts transferred. Baker Mayfield, don't laugh. I know he just got waived and all that stuff. But, I mean, look at what he did in college. Baker Mayfield transferred. Caleb Williams transferred. There are good players all over the place who transfer all the time. And is it the majority of the players in the portal? Are they all great? No. Most of the guys who are in the portal are not good. I mean, most of the guys in the portal are down the depth chart at their old school, and they're probably going to stay there at their new school. But there are going to be guys who will not try to go Power 5 to Power 5. Guys who are down the depth chart at a Power 5 go to a different level and end up finding a lot of success. I was looking at Shockey Jacques Louis, right? In 4 years at Pitt, 40 games, Shockey Jacques Louis caught 83 passes for 1,010 yards and 3 touchdowns. 83, 1,000, 3 touchdowns. In 1 year at Akron, 12 games, he caught 74 passes, 931 yards, and 2 scores. Almost the same production in 1 year. And you tell me, where did Shockey Jacques Louis have more fun? Did he have more fun playing at Pitt for 4 years, catching 80 passes over the course of 4 seasons? Or did he have more fun going to Akron and being the focal point of the offense, catching 74 passes in a year, putting up that kind of production, being involved in the game plan like that? Todd Sibley, how many seasons was he at Pitt? 5 years at Pitt? And he had 69 carries for 321 yards and 1 touchdown in all that time at Pitt. 5 seasons. He goes to Albany this year, 153 carries, more than he had at Pitt, 987 yards, way more than he had at Pitt, and 10 rushing touchdowns. You tell me, I mean, like, that was a good decision for Todd Sibley. We can't paint with a broad brush when it comes to the transfer portal, or the players in the transfer portal, or the impact, the effect that the transfer portal is having on college sports. For a lot of these guys, then it's a good decision. It's a good decision to go. And you know what? It's not just a good decision to go down. There are guys who made a good decision to go up a level. Tyler Wiltz made a good decision to transfer. I was just looking at somebody else. Stefano Millen made a good decision to transfer. There have been a handful of guys Pitt has gotten. I think I added up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 guys that Pitt has brought in as transfers that I think made a really good decision to transfer to Pitt. And some guys transferred up, some guys transferred laterally, some guys transferred from Power 5 programs, you might say, or maybe a level above. You're talking about a Notre Dame or a Florida. And those were good decisions. For some guys, it makes sense to go. Does it make sense to have 500 guys go into the portal in one day across all levels? That seems like it's a bit extreme. And are some of those guys going to find themselves on the outside looking in without an opportunity, without a chance to play as a result of going into the transfer portal? Yeah, they are. And there's a part of me, and I'll probably talk about this more later this week on the Morning Pit, or maybe at some point in this offseason. I'm very much a believer in when we're in a situation and it seems crazy and it's turmoil and it's all over the place and holy cow, things are never going to be the same. This is insane. This isn't right. Everything's going wrong. This whole thing is doomed. I always try to take a step back and say it's a period of transition, and there will come a time that things will sort of settle in. That things will kind of cool out a little bit and things will level off. And it won't be 1,000 guys going in every 2 days, or 500 every day or whatever it was yesterday and today. That it'll be a little more reasonable, that there'll be better information provided to the players, that there'll be better options for the players on what they want to do. If they want to go into the portal, if they want to test out the portal, if they want to just find out what kind of interest is out there. I mean, we do this for players when they're deciding whether or not to enter the NFL. You can get an NFL draft grade. Why not give players a realistic sense of where they stand as transfer portal candidates? And maybe it's, maybe there's too many to do something like that effectively. But I think we can get into a better system, and I think we can gradually find our way there. But we're in that transition period now. And when you're in the middle of the transition period, it's not like the eye of the hurricane. It's the rest of the hurricane is what it feels like, because it feels like everything is going to be destroyed. Everything is going to be torn down. Nothing's ever going to be the same. And the whole thing is ruined. The whole enterprise is ruined. Now, the whole enterprise may change, and never really be what it once was. And we could have a long discussion about whether what it once was really a good thing for all parties involved or just for certain parties involved. But as that transition happens, it's going to feel rough and bumpy and feel like all hell is breaking loose and it's never going to be broken or it's never going to be fixed again. And the reality is there'll be a new normal that's established, and it won't be like it used to be, but there'll be a way to sort of standardize these things. It's the same way with NIL. It's the same way with the transfer portal. These things will be figured out. It won't stay in this sort of Wild West free agency forever. I mean, it might be a free agency forever, but it'll be a little more regulated. There'll be more rules around it, and it'll be more of a formal process, is what I think. And so, I'm going off on a tangent here about the transfer portal, but it's because that's the hip thing to do, because for the last 2 days, all people have been doing is going off on tangents about the transfer portal. And I guess my tangent, I hope, is at least a little bit different, because I'm saying it's not the end of the world. It's crazy right now. It's messed up, and a lot of things are being affected. Teams are being affected, coaches are being affected, players are being affected. Not to mention fan bases and bowl games and all of these things. But we'll find our way through. I'm fairly confident of that. All right, we got a couple super chatters who jumped in here, and we appreciate that. Bill Florian says, you seem to be a little down on Cignetti earlier in the year. Has your opinion on him changed or stayed the same after an entire season? Has my opinion on Frank Cignetti changed? Well, so I mean, here's what I would say about Frank Cignetti and Pitt's offense as a whole. Kind of what I said throughout the season, or at least through the second half of the season. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me how this offense with these players could be performing as poorly as it was. It didn't make sense to me that Keaton Slovis, who threw 58 touchdown passes in the Pac-12, or Konate Mumfield, who was a freshman All-American, or Gavin Bartholomew, who was a freshman All-American, or, Jared Wayne. You run down the list of the players they had on this offense, and it didn't make sense to me that they'd be performing, and not to mention Izzy Abanikanda, who was, breaking a Tony Dorsett record. It didn't make sense to me that this offense would be as ineffective as it was, unproductive as it was, and just generally costing them games the way they did. It didn't line up. And I said what I said throughout the season is it's a combination of all factors. It's all parties involved, but it really is either the quarterback or the coordinator. And that's what has to be figured out. And that's what Pat Narduzzi, I thought Pat Narduzzi would have to make a decision about that this offseason. Well, Keaton Slovis transferred, so no decision needs to be made, I guess. I think Cignetti probably could have done a better job tailoring the offense to the quarterback. I think the quarterback could have done a better job executing the offense. I think there's a lot of blame to go around for this offensive ineptitude and the season that it produced and the disappointment that it generated. I think there's a lot of blame to go around for it. Cignetti shares some of that, I would say. Because he, again, I think, if the offensive system wasn't a fit for the quarterback who had been picked to be the starter, then either change the starter or change the offense. Tweak it. Do something to it to make it work better. And that really didn't seem to happen. So, I guess that's my answer. Let's see. Joe New chimed in as a super. He says, "What do you think the odds are that Baldonado returns? When do you think we will know?" Let's see. Hava Baldonado. I mean, my guess is he's not going to come back. I'm not ruling it out entirely. I think it's possible he could return. I think he, Pat Narduzzi talked about how the NFL scouts really liked how he was close to making a lot of plays this year, even though his stat production didn't exactly turn up as having a lot of plays made. He did not produce at the level I think he expected to produce. I don't think he produced at the level that Pitt's coaches and, defensive staff expected him to produce. I think they expected a lot more out of Hava Baldonado this year, and it didn't happen for a variety of reasons. I think he was hurt. I think he was banged up for a while. But I think, in terms of what would he gain by coming back, I think he would gain, production. I think that's what it'd be, the opportunity to come back and have a bigger stat-producing season. But if he's hearing from NFL scouts that they liked his film regardless of the low production, if he's hearing that the scouts just want to see him test and show his explosiveness and that kind of thing, then he very well could go. I came into the season expecting it to be Haba Baldonado's last at Pitt. I will probably continue expecting that until he announces otherwise. When will he announce? I mean, it's so tough to tell. We're so conditioned right now that we expect everyone to opt out of the bowl game. You know what I mean? Everybody who's not going to be at Pitt next year opt out of the bowl game. But that's not the case. I mean, a lot of guys who were seniors played last year. A lot of guys who were seniors are going to play this year. I think it'll just be a handful of guys, maybe guys who are dealing with injuries. Obviously, Kalijah Cansey's not going to play in the bowl game because he's hurt. Although it's very curious how that's being presented to us, the fact that it was, because of the injury. That's why he's not playing in the bowl game. And Pat Narduzzi even saying if he wasn't hurt, he would have been playing in the bowl game. I don't know if I would go that far, but I think the injury took the decision out of Cansey's hands, which, I guess leaves it up to our imagination. But my guess is if Haba Baldonado... See, I mean, I could see him playing in the bowl game and then announcing that he's not coming back for another year. So even playing in the bowl game, I don't know if it really kind of defines anything for us. So that's my non-answer to that. JC says, what are you hearing about Dante Cephas? So Dante Cephas, former Penn Hills standout, went to Kent State, had some academic issues out of high school, which is why his recruitment maybe wasn't what it should have been for a player of his ability. He went to Kent State. He's been lighting it up. He's had a great career at Kent State so far, and he's in the transfer portal. Pitt, I think, was the first school to offer him. But he's got, you name it. Penn State, Notre Dame, West Virginia, Georgia, somebody else I saw in there. He's got a lot of options. And I think Pitt's going to have a real shot. But I also think, kind of like I said, he didn't really get recruited out of high school due to the academic issues. And so he might be looking at this as an opportunity to go through the recruiting process, really to go through it for real this time, for the first time. And that might mean that it could take a while, and as he visits schools and checks it all out. We had another one in here. DJ Dennison says, how much more do I have to give to get Ty Diefenbach a 3rd star? Maybe tell your bosses that he's considering flipping to Penn State. Yeah, we'll try and get him another look. I forget if he was even ranked at this point. I forget if he had any ranking before he got the Pitt offer or committed to Pitt, but he's a 2-star now. I think there's a chance he could climb. His film is intriguing. We'll just have to try and get them to take another look at it. The hard thing is he only played in 6 games this past season, Ty Diefenbach, and so he didn't put up a lot of stats. He got hurt. He got hurt in the second game, broke his tibia when his lineman fell into his leg. Seems painful. But then he came back and played a few more games at the end of the season. So he doesn't have a lot from that year, from this past season. I think his junior film was really his big year, or his junior year was his big year, and I think put up his best film. And so that's probably the one that you look at, try to get the rankings bumped from. But we'll see. I don't know. I feel like we could do a whole hour Panther-Lair show just complaining about rankings, and I'm not going to do that. All right, let's see. Do we have any other super chatters down there we wanted to get to? No, we got lots of comments, though. Benjamin Glazer, one of our regulars, says, I know back in 2020 there were concerns about the effects of the COVID year on recruiting. Are we seeing that in regards to class size, and or is it having a downstream effect on high school seniors? I think it is. I really do think there is an impact. I mean, you've seen the last few recruiting classes for Pitt have been smaller. That's largely due to the fact, due to the impact of guys coming back when they ordinarily would have been out of eligibility. You're seeing fewer scholarships available, and so they're taking fewer guys. I think Pitt was gearing up to have a bigger class this year. At one point they had 19 commitments. They're down to 14 now. They were down to 13 before Ty Diefenbach committed. I don't think they intended to have a class of 13 or 14. They intended to have more than that, but typically in a year like this where you're aiming for a big class, you'd be like 24 or 25 This year, Pitt was going for a big class of like 20 or 21 or maybe 22. And I think that is, as you say, sort of the downstream effect of super seniors in the COVID year and that extra year of eligibility coming back and taking up scholarship spots. And I certainly think it took up spots in the last few recruiting classes. And I think it's taken them up again this year and will again for another year or two. So you figure anybody, it will be the recruiting class of 2020. It will be the last group that got this extra year. So those guys in 2020, they were freshmen in 2020. And then they would have had 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So 2025 will be the last year any of these guys even has a chance to come back for a sixth year. So you're looking at a couple more seasons of this. We're at 2023 now, right, that we're coming up on. So we have 3 more seasons where you're going to have this. I think the numbers will continue to dwindle over the next few years as you get further and further away from guys who maybe had significant playing time impacted. I think there were guys who played in 2020 who felt like they didn't really get the full season experience that they should have. Maybe they had games canceled. Maybe they only played 10 or 11 games. I think it's just when I was looking at the ACC records since 2013. Miami only played 9 conference games that year, and so I think it's nobody played in front of fans. Guys who were on the field and playing a lot might feel like they got gypped out of a year, and so they do want that year back. Whereas a guy who was a freshman that season might feel less inclined to use that 6th year. Now, it's all going to depend on different guys' situations. For some guys, it makes the most sense. For some guys, it doesn't. But I think we will see the numbers dwindle over the next few years. You won't have as many super seniors on the roster in 2024 and 2025 as you have in 2021 and 2022, or even 2023. And so as that happens, you'll see the high school recruiting numbers come back up. But I do think over the last few years, just in general across the country, there have been fewer, recruiting classes have been smaller because each of these teams has had fewer scholarship spots to give out. And so as the recruiting classes shrink, it all trickles down. If there are fewer available spots in the Power 5 schools, well, guys are going to get kicked down to the Group of 5 schools, and they're going to take up spots from other guys who are going to get kicked down to the FCS schools, and then those guys are going to take up spots, and guys who would have ordinarily gone FCS are going to get kicked down to D2, and the guys who ordinarily would have gone D2 are going to get kicked down to D3, and so on and so forth. And I think you've seen that. To some extent, maybe it's affecting the transfer portal. And filling it up with guys who say I should be playing at a higher level, but I'm not because I missed my spot at wherever, Miami of Ohio or FCS, you know what I mean? Or I missed my spot at D2, so I had to go to D3, but I am a D2 player. I feel like I'm good enough to play D2 or FCS or something like that. And so I think there is that trickle-down effect because of these extra spots being used up. I think there is, it has kind of put the squeeze on high school recruits, but I think in a couple of years, it'll lessen and the class sizes will slowly and steadily grow over the next few. Luke Turco says, wonder if Pitt goes after either Syracuse Whippeal kids in the portal. I think the wide receiver for Syracuse was the leading receiver last year. Yeah, that was Courtney Jackson, I think, right? From Gateway? Is that where he's from? I should have this read off the top of my head. Let me see. Yeah, from Gateway. Yeah, he's had a great career at Syracuse. Just trying to bring up his stats to look real quick. Well, this year he caught 15 passes for 200 yards. What did he? Yeah, a little bit of a quieter season this year for Courtney Jackson. 15 catches for 200 yards and 1 touchdown. But a year ago, he had 37 catches for 389 and 3 touchdowns. Went into the transfer portal. Was he their leading receiver? I don't know if he was or not, but either way. Went into the transfer portal. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's looking for... No, he wasn't their leading receiver, actually. The tight end, Rondé Gadsden, was. He caught 54 passes for 891 and 6 touchdowns. Jackson was down the list pretty far, actually. He was there 3, 4, fifth, sixth leading receiver. Either way, I'm not sure. I think, I think they need some receivers. I think they've made some moves on a couple guys. I think they're still trying to fill out the recruiting class as well. I'm not sure if Courtney Jackson's one of the guys that they're going to look at. It could be wrong. I mean, these things change quickly, and there may be conversations happening right now as we speak. But overall, I think that I'm not sure if he's going to be a guy that they look at. And then Josh, I was mess it up. Josh Huff, the running back. Where was he from? Rochester, I think. I'm not sure that they'll really go after him. I don't know if he didn't even have a carry this past season. Is he even still playing offense? So Pitt kind of offered him, sort of made a late move, but I don't think it wasn't real a real passionate recruitment. Mark Shilaju says the early line on the Sun Bowl has Pitt as 7-point dogs. Anyone surprised? Well, I think part of it, and somebody else. JAMST174 points out, can't even tell you who our quarterback will be. 7 may be generous. And that's, I think that's probably where it comes from. If your quarterback's going to be Nate Yarnell or Nick Patty, you're going to be an underdog, And granted, there are questions about UCLA's quarterback situation, whether their quarterback is going to play or whether their running back is going to play him, as their two best players, and both guys are rumored to be considering sitting out. If they do, that's going to swing the pendulum again. I don't know if it's going to swing to Pitt being a favorite, but it's going to affect it pretty considerably, and we're going to be looking at a very different game than if Pitt and UCLA were playing each other in the middle of October or something like that, or in a non-conference game in September. And so, my guess is the 7-point line is based on Keaton Slovis not playing. For everybody who wants to bash Keaton Slovis, you see, they're moving the line based on him opting out or deciding to transfer. They're probably just moving the line based on not knowing who's going to be the quarterback. There's at least still a chance for UCLA, unless that guy announced and I missed it. But, I think with Pitt, it's not going to be the starter all season. So it's going to be one of the backups who presumably or ostensibly is an inferior player. That's my guess on why the betting line is what it is. The Panther Room says, check out Boston College versus Virginia Tech game today. They called one pass play downfield in the first half. BC's team and play calling was so bad. It was impossible to judge him as a quarterback. I think he's better than what we had. It's going to be... Yeah, John Kristovich agrees. Phil Jurkovec is a significant upgrade over Keaton Slovis. Phil will lead Pitt to the ACC title. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what Phil is going to do for Pitt this year. He's obviously got a lot of natural talent. He was great in high school at Pine Richland. I think he earned every bit of that 4-star ranking that he had. Obviously didn't work at Notre Dame. He had one really good season at Boston College, and then dealt with injuries. So I think it's a mixed bag, and it's up in the air. I mean, I think all the tools are there. It's just a question of whether it's gonna come together. I don't know if he's gonna lead him to the ACC championship or not. I like your enthusiasm, John. Let's see. Scrolling down here. The Panther Room says, I think Nick Patty wins this bowl game and shows that he was better than Slovis. Just my opinion. I'll be honest. I don't know about Patty versus Slovis. All right. I think they're different players. I think they offer different possibilities. I think Slovis has more arm talent and can make more plays downfield. I think Nick Patty is Nick Patty. He does Nick Patty things. You know what I mean? He does what Nick Patty does. Like, I would like to see him play in the Sun Bowl. I'm not sure what Nick Patty's plans are. It seems like he's not coming back. That seems to be the assumption. Pitt seems to be operating as if Nick Patty's not coming back. I would like to see him play in the Sun Bowl, though. I would like to see Nick Patty have that swan song. I would like to see Nick Patty finish his career potentially with a win over UCLA in a Sun Bowl. Do something that, Kenny Pickett won one bowl game in his time at Pitt. And that was 2019. The last Pitt quarterback before that to win a bowl game was, Chad Wojcik, 2013. I would like to see Nick Patty put himself into the record books for that. I think he's been a great teammate. I think he's been a great Pitt man, for whatever that means. He's a great kid. He's a hard worker. I've never known him to complain about his role. He was willing to sit behind Kenny Pickett and be Kenny Pickett's backup for 4 years. I mean, he's just, even when Kenny Pickett came back, he stayed to be the backup and, help that team to the ACC championship as the backup quarterback. I would like to see him have that opportunity. I would like to see him have the chance to finish out his career, getting this team to 9 wins, going out with a win, a victory over a Power 5 opponent in the Sun Bowl. I think that would be great. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that would be great. Scroll through here. I'm just going to try and get through as many of these questions as we can. Mark Shoju says, can we still anticipate players opting out of the Sun Bowl? I think so. I think there probably could be a few more, is my guess. Royce Beacom says, be careful of overreacting. Jurkovec was not able to carry Boston College on his shoulders like Pickett did with Pitt. Consider what Pitt will have around him next year. Well, I mean, there's certainly something to be said for the players that are going to be around Phil Jurkovec next year. And I think they're unknowns. Blake Zabovic and Jake Cradle. Are those guys coming back? Jared Wayne, is he coming back? Izzy Abanikanda, is he coming back? Those are probably the main ones, I guess Sibo Flemister is going to have the option to either hang it up or play one more year. Vincent Davis, haven't seen anything from him, any announcement from him. So I mean, there's a question of who's going to be around him. And you need those offensive linemen to come back. You need Jared Wayne to come back. You need Konate Mumfield, obviously. You want Gavin Bartholomew and all those guys to return. And that's going to be a big part of it. It's going to be a big part of the success they have. If those guys all come back, and you have Rodney Hammond and Sibo Flemister, you should have the talent around the quarterback to be able to be able to succeed, and maybe not be a high-powered offense, but be a more effective one than you were this past season. You know what I mean? Relying on the playmakers to make the plays, and with a quarterback who can get the ball to them. And if Slovis can if Jurkovec can read the information, process the information quicker, if he's familiar enough with Cignetti's offense that he, kind of already has that built in on how to operate it, maybe they can be better than they were last year. But you're absolutely right. A lot of it's gonna depend on the guys who come back. Panther Room says his arm doesn't really look that much better than Slovis, but he can run the ball, he takes chances, and he's got guts. Everything that was holding Slovis back from leading this team, in my opinion. Will Z says, I still think Slovis was concussed for the majority of the season. Look, one of the great what-if questions, certainly about Pitt football in 2022 and maybe on a longer timeline than that, is what happens if on Pitt's final play of the first half against Tennessee, they just take a knee. And people would probably boo. Admit it, you would. You would probably boo the team coming off the field for taking a knee and not trying to be aggressive and not trying to go for it, even if it was a dumb decision. As Pat Narduzzi said, I'm a dumbass, Jerry, for deciding to do that. You would boo, and that's fine. But if they had done that, I wonder what Keaton Slovis would have been. I wonder what the offense would have been. I wonder what the season would have been. And it's a hypothetical. I don't know the answer to that question, but he certainly wasn't the same. And I think he played pretty well in the second half of the West Virginia game. I think he was playing pretty well in the first half of the Tennessee game. He didn't play that great after that. I really would be curious to, I wonder how that would have gone. JC says big question marks on Kenny Pickett going into his senior year. He absolutely put everything together his senior year. Yeah, that's true. He did. And he did it in his, playing in his third year in Mark Whipple's offense. This will be Phil Jurkovec's third year playing in Frank Cignetti's offense. And so maybe there's something to be said for that, of understanding how to operate an offense, feeling comfortable in an offense. Because, Kenny Pickett wasn't great in 2019 or 2020. He certainly wasn't the kind of player that we saw in 2021. He was uncomfortable in the pocket. He didn't really feel the pressure or see the pressure well. He thought there was pressure when it wasn't there. He scrambled too early. He wasn't all that accurate. He wasn't very good in those 2 years. I never thought they needed to bench him, but it's not like he was anything special. And in 2021, obviously, he had the greatest season by a quarterback in Pitt history. Can Phil Jurkovec have that kind of turnaround? After, in his third year playing with Frank Cignetti after a 1 year break between the two? I don't know. I don't think it's fair to put a Kenny Pickett standard or expectation on anyone, but who knows? Let's see. Trying to get through here. Scrolling down. See if anyone else. We're kind of. A few people have been asked about offensive linemen in the transfer portal. I got to be honest, and I was talking to somebody about this today, just kind of in a casual conversation about getting offensive linemen from the transfer portal. And so I'm going to look at it, right? Let's say everybody who can come back does come back. You have Jake Cradle, Blake Zabovic, and Ryan Jacoby as your interior linemen. If all three of those guys come back, that's two guards in the center there. You've got Matt Gonsalves and Branson Taylor and Ryan Baer as your tackles, right? So you've got 6 guys. And then you've got some of those younger guys like Terrence Moore as a backup center, Terrence Enos and Jason Collier as backup guards. You've got some talent. I could see them wanting to bring in maybe an interior lineman, particularly if they lose a Zabovic or a Cradle. At some point, you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and go with the younger player, find out what Terrence Moore has, find out what Terrence Enos has, find out what Jason Collier has. At some point, you're going to have to do that. I think they know what Ryan Baer has, and I think they're excited about him. And really, with Taylor, Gonsalves, and Baer, one of those guys could probably play guard. Gonsalves has done it before. Taylor might. I forget if Taylor has or not. But you could always, one of those guys could learn guard and line up. If you just feel like all three of them can't be kept off the field, you could do that and play one of them in the interior. I wouldn't be surprised. It would probably depend. Well, first of all, if you have a good option out there, you go get him. You know what I mean? You don't wonder about your depth chart. If there's a good offensive line transfer out there who can help you and he's interested, you go get him. You know what I mean? You don't waste time there. Beyond that, it would probably depend on what Cradle and Zabovic decide to do. If those guys are coming back, you're going to have a pretty solid starting point for the offensive line. If those guys leave, if one or both of them leave, then you're going to have some holes you're going to have to fill. And so we'll see. That's kind of one of those things, and those guys, might play in the Sun Bowl and announce their decision after that. Who knows? It's tough to predict with these things. There's no real sort of set schedule. There should be, but there's no real sort of set schedule on when guys will announce if they're coming or if they're going. All right, that's about an hour or so, and I know we didn't get to all the comments and questions, but I appreciate everybody who chimed in. It's been fun to it's been fun to have the conversation. It's been a good time here on a Tuesday night. We had a great crowd. I appreciate everybody who came in here on a Tuesday night and showed up for the live stream. I know we switch the nights. Sometimes that doesn't always work well, but maybe when it's the day after you get 3 quarterbacks, movement on 3 quarterbacks, everybody's a little more anxious to talk about it. But look, tomorrow night should be a fun one. Pitt at Vanderbilt, 9 o'clock. I forget what that game is on, what TV, but you can find it online. It's the internet. You can find the information that you need. But it's going to be a big game for Pitt. Chance to win 6 in a row, which they haven't done since Jeff Capel's first year. So you got that going for you, which should be pretty nice. Should be fun to see when John Hughley finally breaks out. We really didn't get a chance to talk about that much at all. Gonna have to talk about it on the Morning Pit tomorrow. So here's the plug. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Oh, Chris, I'm not going to remember. How can I even know that you put up a new video? I'll have no idea. click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone whenever we release a new video or when we go live like we did here tonight. So do that. Like this video and click the subscribe button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then spend all of your time at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, and recruiting, all right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for everybody tuning in tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you making some time here on a Tuesday, excuse me, to hang out with us. And yeah, hope you have a good Tuesday, a good rest of the week. And we will talk to you for the Morning Pit each morning, Monday through Friday. And then we'll talk to you again next Wednesday night for the live stream right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.